It is hour number 2. That's drive time right here on the show that shakes the Southland. Clemson Sports Talk. Lawton Swan hanging out with you on a big day. Breaking news all over the place, not just with the portal, staff changes coming to Tiger Town. Tim Bourret, legendary Clemson SID, joins us every week to talk about the ins and the outs of the Clemson Tigers. We'll certainly find out about his thoughts on Clemson and South Carolina, the matchup in Williams-Brice Stadium this past weekend. The Tigers a 16-7 victor in that one. But Tim, welcome in. A busy news day for sure.
Yeah, it is. Now there were always things that happened around this time of the year, but I didn't have to deal as much with the transfer portal as we didn't call it a transfer portal. It was just if a guy's transfer, you might have a few transfer each year guys who just weren't playing that much. But it's you can have crazy days like this, and I guess it'll be this way for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I would imagine that it's never easy, not for the coach, certainly, and Dabo Swinney to make changes on his staff, not for the members of the staff and the athletic department that spends time around these guys all the time. Just from that standpoint, I mean, what is it like as these things begin to sort of roll out, maybe personally, not necessarily talking about Lemansky Hall and Thomas Austin here for you, just kind of in general when you're in the capacity that you're in?
Yeah, no, it's hard because you spend a lot of time with these guys, and especially when they're recruiting, and that you might get calls on the road from coaches that asking you questions that a recruit or a prospect has brought up. So you get to spend a lot of time with these guys and get to know them, and change is inevitable on a football staff. Dabo didn't have many changes there towards the last 5 or 6 years that that I was in a full-time capacity. I always thought that was one of the reasons for the program's success during that time. Bobby Bowden was the same way with his staff, but things have kind of changed a bit in that regard these days, and you see more and more change even when you have 8 or last year 11 win seasons when he made a change at offensive coordinator.
Again, Tim Bourret joining us here on a Thursday afternoon. So Lemansky Hall, Thomas Austin, both of those guys going to be out in terms of staff changes. Lemansky given an opportunity to kind of advance his future and career elsewhere, according to the statement from Dabo Swinney. And then the difficult decision, as Swinney put it, to seek new leadership on the offensive line. Thomas Austin, a kid that played at Clemson, a kid that played for Dabo Swinney, has the the connections to the university. That's the tough part when you bring guys in the way Clemson has, so many of them being former players. I would imagine a departure such as this is quite difficult. And I know Swinney's got a unique relationship with Lemansky Hall as well, but just in general, having a former player be a part of your staff and then have to have him dismissed has got to be incredibly difficult.
Yeah, it is, and of course, when you start out and you someone that that's played for you, you kind of know what they are all about, but when you hire them down the road, there's a chance you could have to replace them too. I mean, the chances of guys staying with you for the rest of their career. So, but he's also gotten a great opportunity. This is the highest level Thomas Austin has coached, and I'm sure he will get another position at a good school. Especially when you look at the way the team finished in the offensive line. In the month of November, we were 17th in the country in rushing yards per game at 225. So we did some good things with a bunch of young guys. We only started one senior in the offensive line. He certainly did some good things for his resume this year, but obviously Dabo thinks that we can, show some other improvements, some other things there with these young guys that we got. So maybe he's got a more experienced guy on the horizons or whatever. We'll just have to see.
Now, the other thing, Tim, that sort of changed here in the dynamics of the timeline, right, is that you've got the early signing day coming up, and that's become really the signing day in general. I mean, what happens in February is no longer really a big deal. So, can you be patient in this regard if you're Dabo Sweeney, or do you believe it's more along the lines of he kind of already has an idea of where he's going to go and what he's going to do?
That's a really good point. It used to be you'd see a lot of coaches come come and go after the February signing date. But now with all of the good players signing in December, if you make a change like this, there's a sense of urgency for Dabo to get a replacement before that December signing date, because the offensive linemen that you're recruiting want to know who their coach is going to be. So you would think that would be the case, although that can be tough to do when you got a lot of good coaches that are preparing for bowl games. So it seems to me everything's a lot more complicated today with this December signing date, and it just adds so much pressure to the coaches and recruiting, getting ready for a bowl game, and you got staff changes. And I saw one post from a University of Oklahoma site about Brent Venables and all that he's going through right now. On top of that, with his wife is fighting cancer, he's just got an awful lot, going on, as to a lot of coaches.
So one of the thought processes on this whole thing, right? Like in this business, what I do, I get to scheme up. I get to pretend to be the head coach, right? For the listeners. And what I was thinking about is I'm like, okay, so if I'm Dabo Sweeney today, and I know I have to hire an offensive line coach, and I know the portal technically doesn't open until December the 4th, but if I see these names that are on social media that have said I'm in the portal, and I see an offensive lineman or maybe two, because in some cases you see schools that have multiple players in the portal, maybe from a position. Maybe I'll reach out to that coach and maybe I say, hey, you know what? Why don't you come here and maybe we can land those guys that are in the portal.
Yeah. A package deal, so to speak.
Because you can't go the other way, right? Well, you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to induce the players. But hey, if their coach just happens to come and they go, "Oh yeah, I loved coach," maybe they'd come to Clemson as well.
Well, you could see that happen with Chancey Stuckey and Chris Tyree, wherever they end up. Because Tyree was a good receiver, was in the portal from Notre Dame, and Chancey was his coach. So yeah,
exactly.
that is a possibility to happen. I'm not saying to Clemson, I'm just saying just in general.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, if you've got that and you lay out a perfect situation, you've got a position coach that's now without a job, you've got a player that's in that position from that same university, and if those guys had a good relationship, then maybe you bring in Chancey Stuckey. And we're not talking about Clemson here, everybody, even though I think people would say, yeah, bring Chancey back. Let's get him on board. But maybe you could get Tyree in as a wide receiver wherever Chancey lands. So that's the point Tim's trying to kind of accentuate there when you talk about the portal and coaching hires and everything that goes into this. I mean, it's been a wild day, but maybe nothing more, shocking for people than Beaux Collins announcing that he was going to enter the transfer portal. Yeah, he felt like a kid just kind of on the surface, Tim, that I think most people assume would finish his final year in Tiger Town. And I know he's had some ups and downs during his tenure. I know he's a kid from the West Coast. How shocked were you this morning when that news broke?
I'm not shocked by anything anymore as far as, guys leaving no matter what, no matter what year they are. You just got to look at it from their, standpoint, whether they think they've done all they could do at a school, or whether they think, they just need a new, fresh approach, or whether they think that their, playing time is going to go down. People, obviously, when they go in the senior year, they want to, make sure they're going to be, one of the top dogs. And I've not talked to Beaux about, I have no idea what his thought process is. It could he be? You might see, notice that DJ went in the transfer portal, and they were high school teammates, so they wanting to get together for their last year and play together. I don't know. Could Beaux have looked at the returning guys in the Clemson room and look at the guys we got coming back? Not to mention we got 2 5-stars or 1 5-star and a high 4-star coming in at wide receiver next year. Maybe just thought he'd be better off trying to play somewhere else. It's tough to tell.
How do you manage the rosters? I mean, I can't even fathom what it's like for Dabo Swinney at this point. And you may or may not know this, but with a bowl game coming up, I don't think they've had end of the year evaluations or like the sit downs with these players to kind of give them an indication of where they would be. Now, maybe if a player requests it, right? Like if I'm Mitchell Mays, who's also now in the transfer portal or going to enter the transfer portal, then maybe I say, hey, coach, can I sit down? I sit down with you. And then I say, look, I just kind of want to know what's my position here. Am I going to have playing time next year? And if you're like, well, Mitchell, I don't think so. Not going to, then maybe I'm going in the portal. I just can't imagine, Tim, what is going through these coaches' minds when they get this news. And maybe in some cases, maybe they find out when we do.
Yeah, I think everything is an individual circumstance. You're right. You might have some guys that would request an interview and want to get an evaluation how they stand so they can decide whether they're going to leave or not. Other guys, they just go on social media and might say they're going to another school without even meeting with their coaches. Who knows?
Yeah,
how it goes. Each individual, I got to believe that most of the guys and our guys will meet with Dabo, one-on-one before they make that type of a decision. But 90% of them it's all about playing time and where they think they're going to fit into the depth chart for the next season.
Yeah, it is an incredible thing to watch. And you mentioned DJ Uiagalelei earlier. By the way, follow Tim Bourret on Twitter at Tim Bourret, Bourret. DJ back in the portal. Now, his head coach left Oregon State to go take the job at Michigan State. And there's no indication that that'll be his next destination. And it seems even open that maybe DJ might try to take a look at the NFL to see how that goes as well. I saw that in one of the tweets that came out about it. But I mean, this is the new era, if you will, for guys that have graduated and are graduates. They get that second opportunity to leave. And we've seen other cases where players have been at 3, 4, and maybe even 5 schools at this point. It's kind of wild how that's all played out. But Tim, do you think we're headed towards a more structured portal? And is it has it gotten so far gone that they're going to have to rein this back in to a degree at some point, or do you just think this is what it's going to be for the future of college football?
Well, I think it'll settle down a little bit when all the COVID year extensions, so to speak, run their course. It seems like it's a lot more than it has, but just because these guys have these extra years of eligibility. I mean, it's because of COVID that Sam Hartman ended up at Notre Dame. Because that gave him that extra year, and there's a lot of other people that are in that case. So, I think that'll settle down a little bit. But everybody's a lot of these different things that people, whether it be the media or the general public, well, the NCAA's got to do something, or somebody's got to do something. Well, there's one thing that overrides the laws of the NCAA, and that's laws of society. And so if we have the freedoms that we have in the United States, if a general student has the freedom to transfer to 3 different schools over his academic career as a regular student, I don't know how you're going to make separate, rules that will fly in a regular court of law when it comes to athletics.
I think one of the things that might push the change, though, could be, these players who are getting NIL, and let's say that you're making a substantial amount of money. Let's say it's $500,000, $500,000 for a year, but then you don't play, or you transfer out, or whatever, and you certainly have that right to do that. But at some point, I feel like the coaches are going to say, we can't have a system where players are making $500,000 or more dollars a year, but they're not tied to the university. Like in the NFL, if a program says, hey, we're going to give a quarterback X amount of money, well, he plays for that program until they decide to trade him or cut him or whatever. In this scenario, the players get the money, and then they don't really have to do anything after they get the cash in their bank account. I mean, if somebody wants to give somebody $500,000 up front, the kid doesn't even have to play. I mean, in this system, and I don't see how that's going to continue to exist. I could see pay for play, Tim, where if you get 10 touchdowns, it's $100,000. If you get, X amount of rushing yards, it's a certain amount. The kind of incentive based. I could see that maybe. But I don't think this whole thing's gonna fly across the country. I don't see how it's going to continue.
Yeah, like I said, it'll end up in some courts of law and they'll the rules will get determined off of that.
And it's going to be a different sport, I got a feeling, over the next 10 years than it's been, and it's certainly right now. Would you say this is kind of as wide open as it's ever been in your time covering it?
Oh yeah, just because of the way people can move from school to school and all that's involved with that. There was never anything. I mean, you never thought about having guys go from one school to another within the same conference. I mean, it happened a couple of times way back in the 80s. There was the kid who went from Maryland to Georgia Tech. Can't remember his name, but the SEC had a rule you had to sit out 2 years if you transferred within the league. So, that's all changed now.
Yeah, and I think, wasn't it at one point, Tim, you could transfer, in conference, but you lost the year, right?
Well, that's what I just said. You had to sit out 2 years if you were going to transfer in the league.
Oh, gotcha. I thought it was, so if you transfer from Clemson to Georgia Tech, you had your transfer year, but it counted against you, and then you could play the next year. You were just a year up.
But I remember in the SEC there was a rule: if you played in 2011 and you transferred to an SEC school within the league, you couldn't play again until 2014.
Unbelievable. Tim Bourret here with us for a few more minutes.
You just sit out 12 and 13.
Tim, I tell you what, we didn't give you a chance to talk about the Clemson Tiger basketball team, and they actually had a pretty historic win this past weekend. If I put you on hold, do you have some time to do another segment with us?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we're going to place Tim on hold, and we'll come back to him here on the show that shakes the Southland in just a minute. Again, portal alerts left and right. We've got it covered on the website, the transfer ticker. I'm trying to keep up with prominent names, right? Like Trevor Etienne. That's a pretty prominent name for Tiger fans. I know he's down at Florida, but apparently he wants to get into the portal. You know what? His brother's shadow doesn't loom quite as large today as it once did. Could he be a portal guy that Clemson might look at? Who knows? Who knows? Again, we'll hit a quick break. We'll come back with Tim Bourret right here on the show that shakes the Southland. It's Clemson Sports Talk. Perfect. All right. 11:30:23. Segment 6. All right. Here we go, Tim. Coming back. Back at it on a Thursday afternoon. We held him over. Tim Bourret joins the program. Tim, Clemson basketball, 6-0. They go on the road to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and have a historic performance in the ACC-SEC Challenge, the inaugural event. What an event it's been. But nonetheless, give us some takeaways from your time down there in Alabama.
Yeah, it was a terrific win. So it was a win over a ranked team. Just the second time Clemson's beaten a non-conference top 25 team on the road in Clemson history. Only other time it happened was in 16-17 when Clemson beat a 22nd ranked South Carolina team in Columbia. Alabama had won 19 straight games over 2 years at home, and they'd won those games by an average of 26 points per game. So they had been dominant at home. They were leading the country in scoring at 98 points a game. And all of their stats were unbelievable. They were out rebounding the opposition by 11 rebounds per game. So to go in there and win that game was, and the way Clemson won, Clemson shot over 50% and tied the rebounding in the game, but just shot the ball so well, especially in the second half. 8 for 11 in the second half, a 3-point shot. So it was a really a terrific performance. I told Coach at the end of the game, the first half it was 33-32, so we kind of beat Alabama at our game, and then the second half score was 52-45. So we really outscored them, and so we kind of beat them at their own game in the second half.
You know what's hilarious about you saying that? I was literally about to say to you what I thought was most amazing about the ball game was that in the first half, it was more of a controlled kind of tempo game that Clemson likes. And then in the second half, I mean, it was kind of a little more open floor, and Clemson shooting so well. And to me, what that said is that this team, has the versatility to play with a lot of programs. And that's a big deal because when you go through the Atlantic Coast Conference, when you get into postseason play, et cetera, you're going to run into different styles of play. And it does feel like this group, and I think it's partly because I think they're very smart, heady players. I mean, they make the extra pass when it's necessary. They feel like a very good basketball team. And I that was one of my biggest takeaways from the ball game, Tim. No kidding you.
Yeah, no, that's true. We've already played different styles. This year UAB, has kind of been a pressing team that forces a lot of turnovers, and then the very next night, or 2 nights later, we played Davidson, which plays a totally different, brand of basketball. So we've played up tempo teams that were not as up tempo, teams that played zones, teams that played man for man. And so the credit Coach Brownell with a great job of, doing well on scouting reports. I sat in on the scouting report before the Alabama game at the hotel, and he is very good about being frank about every aspect of the game when he's giving his scouting report to the team going in. And he, told them things that Alabama did well, but he also mentioned that he thought they were a little soft on the inside, and that we could score some shots in the paint. That Coach Oates' approach is to play man for man on the inside, so PJ wasn't going to get double teamed on the inside, which I've seen over the last couple of years as a mistake by opponents. The way to do well against Clemson on the inside is to try to double team PJ when he gets the ball in the post and make him Tim Duncan instead of being a one-on-one, because he's got some great pro moves one-on-one in the post. So there's just been really good preparation, and we saw that at Alabama.
Yeah, it was a really good performance as well on the interior from Ian Shefflin with 14 rebounds. I kind of compared him to like a Dennis Rodman type. He's not the most overly skilled offensive player, but he's just kind of a gritty guy and just gets after it. Even when he came out of the game, he's a little bit banged up, but you just feel like you can trust that he's always going to be there making plays on the glass on both the offensive and the defensive end of the court.
Yeah, the end of that game was kind of classic Ian Shefflin, and he landed on his funny bone on his elbow and had to come out for a while. But God bless him, he got back in there and ended up with 14 rebounds, which was a great accomplishment against the team that had 5 different players that were 6'10" or 6'11". He really battled down the inside, and so did PJ. PJ, by the way, had 8 rebounds, but he only played 21 minutes. So he did very well.
Yeah, it's a fun group to watch. And again, the Clemson Tiger men's basketball team, I can't believe this stat, Tim. It just blows my mind. I'm sure it's kind of like Florida having not played a game outside of the state of Florida non-conference since the 1989 or whatever it was, until they played at Utah. But Clemson was just their second ever road non-conference win. I don't even know how that's a thing. That just blows my mind.
Over a ranked team. Yeah.
Over a ranked team, right? Yeah,
on their home court. Yeah, on their home court. So there were some parameters. We did beat a 3rd-ranked Kentucky team in the season opener of '96
in Indiana, I think. Yeah,
that was in the Hoosier Dome. We beat Big Country Reeves in Oklahoma State in the Rainbow Classic one year when they were ranked in the top 20. But so it was it was really a very kind of a landmark win, and hopefully one that's going to carry on, and we're now really rooting hard for Alabama to go on the winning streak and have their net ranking move up. So that'll turn around and help Clemson's net ranking.
Yeah, that's the new age of college basketball, as everybody knows. And again, the Tigers will take on the Pitt Panthers coming up. That's Sunday, Tim. Is that right? Pitt on Sunday?
Yes, a Sunday 2:00 game, I believe.
There we go.
It is. So we've had pretty good success against Pitt under Coach Brunell. So, but that'll be a tough place to play, and Pitt's got a good squad this year.
Well, you can see his Twitter account on the screen. Go follow him today for great content, tips, and notes about your Clemson Tigers. He's Tim Bourret. Tim, we'll talk to you next Thursday. Thank you, sir.